Right now, Logan Paul is facing federal investigation by U.S. authorities for financial fraud, false advertising, and endangering public health. If convicted, he could spend decades behind bars and lose everything he's built. The YouTube superstar, who once commanded millions of loyal followers, now faces the complete collapse of his empire. From a crypto scam that stole $18.5 million from his own fans to an energy drink that sent children to the hospital, this is the shocking story of how one of the internet's biggest stars became one of its most dangerous predators. But before we dive into this wild story, smash that subscribe button because apparently that's how we keep the lights on around here. Don't worry, I'll only remind you 2 more times, maybe 3.
Logan Paul's story reads like a modern-day cautionary tale about power, greed, and the dark side of internet fame. What you're about to discover will completely change how you view celebrity culture and the dangerous game of blind trust that millions play every single day. This isn't just about one man's fall from grace. It's about a system that allows influencers to weaponize their fame against the very people who made them successful. The rise of Logan Paul seemed almost too perfect to be real. In the early 2010s, when Vine was the hottest platform on the internet, Logan carved out his place with 6-second clips that were equal parts hilarious and completely unhinged. His content wasn't sophisticated, but it was authentic in a way that resonated with millions. While other creators played it safe, Logan pushed boundaries with stunts that made people stop scrolling and actually pay attention. When Vine shut down in 2016, most creators disappeared into digital obscurity. Logan Paul didn't just survive the transition, he absolutely dominated it. His YouTube channel exploded to over 23 million subscribers, turning him into a legitimate media powerhouse. Every video was a calculated move in building his empire. Branded merchandise flew off the shelves, major Hollywood studios came calling, and his podcast became one of the most watched shows on the internet. The boxing matches were pure genius from a business perspective. When Logan stepped into the ring with Floyd Mayweather, he wasn't just fighting for sport, he was cementing his status as someone who could command global attention and massive paydays. The fight generated over 1 million pay-per-view buys and showed the world that Logan Paul wasn't just a YouTuber anymore, he was a legitimate entertainer who could draw crowds and move money like a traditional celebrity. His entry into WWE felt like the natural next step in his evolution. The crowds loved him, the storylines wrote themselves, and suddenly, Logan Paul wasn't just an internet personality, he was a mainstream superstar appearing on primetime television. Everything seemed to be going perfectly according to plan. But success breeds arrogance, and arrogance breeds mistakes. The first major crack in Logan's carefully crafted image came in January 2018 with a decision that would haunt him for years. During a trip to Japan, Logan filmed a video in Aokigahara Forest, a location tragically known for numerous individuals taking their own lives. What happened next revealed a side of Logan that many fans had never seen before. The video showed Logan and his friends discovering someone who had recently passed away. Instead of stopping the cameras and showing respect, Logan continued filming, making jokes and treating the situation like content for his channel. The reaction was immediate and devastating. The internet erupted in outrage, calling Logan heartless, exploitative, and completely tone-deaf to the seriousness of mental health issues. Major sponsors dropped him overnight. YouTube pulled his channel from their premium advertising program, cutting off millions in potential revenue. The backlash was so intense that Logan effectively disappeared from social media for months. For a creator whose entire livelihood depended on staying relevant, this silence was career suicide. Many people thought this was the end of Logan Paul's influence forever. But Logan Paul proved he understood something that most people miss about modern fame. In the attention economy, being hated is sometimes better than being ignored. Instead of disappearing completely, Logan crafted one of the most successful comeback campaigns in internet history. His apology video wasn't just an admission of guilt, it was a masterclass in public relations manipulation.
He spoke with mental health professionals on camera, made donations to prevention organizations, and positioned himself as someone who had learned from his mistakes. The boxing matches with KSI weren't just about sport, they were about rehabilitation. Each fight was an opportunity to show the world that Logan Paul had changed, that he could channel his energy into something productive rather than destructive.
The WWE storylines played perfectly into this narrative of redemption. Here was someone who had made terrible mistakes, but was working to earn back the public's trust through hard work and dedication. By 2022, Logan Paul wasn't just forgiven, he was celebrated as proof that anyone could change if they were willing to put in the effort. This redemption arc was so convincing that when Logan announced his next big venture, millions of people were ready to trust him with their money. CryptoZoo promised to be the Pokemon of the 21st century, a revolutionary blockchain game that would let players buy NFT eggs, hatch rare animals, and breed them into valuable hybrids that could be sold for real money. Logan didn't just mention CryptoZoo casually on his podcast, he made it the centerpiece of multiple episodes, diving deep into the mechanics, showing off concept art, and building excitement with the kind of enthusiasm that only someone who truly believed in the project could generate. He claimed to have invested over $1 million of his own money and assembled a team of experienced developers who were working around the clock to make his vision a reality.
The pitch was irresistible. This wasn't just a game, it was an investment opportunity disguised as entertainment. Players could have fun while potentially making life-changing money. Logan positioned himself not as a salesman, but as a visionary guide who was sharing an exclusive opportunity with his most loyal supporters. The psychological manipulation was subtle but devastating. Logan leveraged every aspect of his relationship with his audience. He spoke directly to their dreams of financial freedom, their trust in his judgment, and their fear of missing out on something that could change their lives forever. When someone you admire tells you they found a way to make money while having fun, it's almost impossible to resist. Thousands of people, from teenage fans to adult investors, poured money into CryptoZoo. The total amount raised was staggering, $18.5 million, from people who believed they were getting in on the ground floor of something revolutionary. Many of these investors weren't wealthy individuals looking to diversify their portfolios. They were ordinary people who scraped together their savings because they trusted Logan Paul more than they trusted traditional investment advice.
But the dream turned into a nightmare faster than anyone could have imagined. The game didn't just have bugs or delays, it was completely non-functional. Eggs couldn't be hatched, animals couldn't be bred, and the promised marketplace for trading valuable hybrids never materialized. Players who had invested thousands of dollars found themselves holding worthless digital assets, with no way to recover their money. The stories of individual losses were heartbreaking. Helicopter Bob lost $7,000, money he had saved for months while working multiple jobs. An Australian investor lost $500,000, essentially his entire life savings that he had planned to use for retirement. College students borrowed money they couldn't afford to lose, convinced that Logan's track record of success meant this investment was guaranteed to pay off. As the complaints mounted and the problems became impossible to ignore, Logan Paul did something that revealed his true character. He went completely silent for 15 months, while thousands of his supporters desperately tried to get answers about their investments. Logan didn't mention CryptoZoo once. Instead, he casually moved on to new projects, including the launch of Prime Hydration, treating his fans' financial devastation as a minor inconvenience that would eventually blow over. This silence was more damaging than any apology could have been. It showed that Logan viewed his audience not as a community of supporters, but as a resource to be exploited when convenient and ignored when problematic. The man who had spent years building his brand on authenticity and connection was revealed to be someone who would abandon his supporters the moment they became inconvenient. The breaking point came in December 2022 when Coffeezilla, one of the internet's most respected investigative creators, released a 3-part series exposing the truth about CryptoZoo. What Coffeezilla discovered went far beyond simple mismanagement or honest mistakes. The evidence suggested a coordinated effort to defraud investors through a project that was never designed to succeed. The game's code wasn't just broken, it was stolen from another project. The development team included individuals with documented histories of fraud and financial crimes. Millions of dollars in investor money had simply vanished, with no clear accounting of where it went or how it was spent. The evidence painted a picture of a project that was designed from the beginning to separate fans from their money, with no intention of delivering on the promises that had been made.
Instead of responding with humility and accountability, Logan went on the attack. His response video was a masterclass in deflection and intimidation. He accused Coffeezilla of being a clout chaser who was profiting from destroying reputations. He threatened legal action and positioned himself as the victim of a smear campaign rather than the perpetrator of potential fraud. But the most revealing part of Logan's response wasn't what he said publicly, it was what he said privately. Leaked messages showed Logan's true intentions weren't about protecting his reputation or setting the record straight. They were about making Coffeezilla's life miserable. "He's got to pay," Logan wrote, revealing that his legal threats weren't about justice, they were about revenge. This pattern of behavior, attacking critics rather than addressing their concerns, would become Logan's signature response to controversy. Instead of taking responsibility for the harm caused to his supporters, he consistently chose to blame others, threaten legal action, and positioned himself as the victim of unfair attacks.
Hey, quick question. Are you still watching without subscribing? That's like going to a restaurant and not ordering food. Hit that button. It's literally right there. Under massive public pressure and facing potential legal consequences, Logan eventually announced a refund program that offered to buy back some NFTs from CryptoZoo investors. The offer was for $2.3 million, covering roughly 12% of the total amount that had been invested. But even this token gesture came with strings attached. Investors who accepted the refund had to sign agreements promising never to sue Logan for their losses. To many victims, this wasn't accountability, it was extortion. Logan was essentially offering to return a fraction of what people had lost in exchange for their silence about the full extent of the harm that had been caused. It was a calculated PR move designed to minimize legal exposure while creating the appearance of making things right.
The class action lawsuits were inevitable. Over 130 investors joined together to seek $4.2 million in damages, accusing Logan of fraud, negligence, and intentional misrepresentation. But even facing legal action, Logan continued to maintain his innocence, blaming his business partners and positioning himself as someone who had been deceived, rather than someone who had done the deceiving. Just when it seemed like the CryptoZoo scandal might finally be behind him, Logan made a decision that would prove even more damaging to his reputation and potentially more dangerous to public health. In partnership with KSI, he launched Prime Hydration, positioning it as a revolutionary sports drink that would transform the beverage industry.
The marketing campaign for Prime was unlike anything the industry had ever seen. Instead of traditional advertising, Logan leveraged his massive social media following to create genuine excitement about the product. Videos of fans desperately searching store shelves for Prime went viral. The artificial scarcity created a feeding frenzy that made Prime bottles sell for hundreds of dollars on resale markets. Logan positioned Prime as the perfect drink for young athletes and active individuals. The marketing emphasized hydration, electrolytes, and performance enhancement. Parents who might have been skeptical of traditional energy drinks felt comfortable buying Prime for their children
because it was marketed as a sports drink rather than a caffeinated beverage. But there was a problem that wouldn't become clear until it was too late. Prime Energy, the brand's caffeinated variant, contained 200 milligrams of caffeine per can, double the amount found in Red Bull, and far exceeding safe consumption levels for children and teenagers. Worse, the packaging and marketing for Prime Energy was nearly identical to Prime Hydration, making it easy for young consumers and their parents to mistake one product for the other.
The health consequences were immediate and terrifying. Children as young as 10 years old were experiencing rapid heartbeats, insomnia, trembling, and anxiety after consuming just one can of Prime Energy. Emergency room visits related to caffeine overconsumption among minors spiked in areas where Prime was most popular. Parents who thought they were buying a healthy sports drink for their kids were accidentally giving them the equivalent of multiple energy drinks. The reports were horrifying. A 10-year-old boy's heart rate spiked to 120 beats per minute while sitting still after drinking Prime Energy. A 12-year-old girl couldn't sleep for 2 days and experienced panic attacks after consuming the drink before school. Parents described watching their children shake uncontrollably and struggle with breathing difficulties, all because they had trusted a product that was marketed as safe for young consumers.
But the caffeine wasn't the only problem. Independent testing revealed that some batches of Prime contained PFAS, toxic chemicals that have been linked to cancer and serious health issues. These forever chemicals accumulate in the human body over time and have been associated with liver damage, decreased fertility, and increased risk of certain cancers. The discovery of PFAS in Prime was particularly damaging because it revealed that the quality control issues weren't just about caffeine content. The entire production process appeared to be compromised, with potentially dangerous substances making their way into products that were being consumed by millions of young people.
Schools across the UK, US, and Australia began banning Prime on their campuses. The bans weren't just about caffeine content. They were about the broader health risks and the deceptive marketing practices that had put children at risk. Education officials described Prime as a public health threat disguised as a sports drink. Senator Chuck Schumer's call for an FDA investigation was a watershed moment. For a sitting U.S. senator to publicly demand federal oversight of a social media influencer's product was unprecedented. Schumer's statement made it clear that this wasn't just about consumer choice or market competition. This was about protecting children from products that were deliberately designed to exploit their trust and potentially harm their health.
Nutritionists who analyzed Prime's formulation found that despite being marketed as a hydration drink, it actually worked against proper hydration due to its artificial sweetener content and chemical composition. The product was essentially the opposite of what it claimed to be, offering neither the performance benefits of a true sports drink nor the safety profile that parents expected when buying it for their children. Logan's response to the health crisis followed his established pattern of deflection and attack. Instead of acknowledging the legitimate concerns about Prime's safety, he launched a PR campaign designed to shift blame to competitors. His factory tour video was widely seen as a desperate attempt to control the narrative rather than address the underlying problems with the product.
The decision to attack competitors for using red dye 40 while ignoring the PFAS contamination in his own product was particularly cynical. Logan was essentially exploiting parents' fears about food additives to distract from the more serious contamination issues in Prime. It was a calculated move that prioritized damage control over child safety. The market response was swift and devastating.
Prime sales dropped 70% in the UK and 50% in the US as parents became aware of the health risks and retailers began removing the product from prominent shelf positions. The artificial scarcity that had once driven demand was replaced by genuine consumer rejection as word spread about the product's dangers.
Refresco, Prime's manufacturing partner, filed a $67 million lawsuit alleging breach of contract and mismanagement. The lawsuit revealed that Prime's financial problems went far beyond declining sales. The company was allegedly failing to meet basic obligations to its business partners, suggesting that the entire operation was becoming unsustainable. Even Lionel Messi's beverage brand filed suit, claiming that Prime had copied their marketing strategies and design elements. The lawsuit was symbolic of how Logan's business practices had alienated not just consumers, but other companies in the industry who saw Prime as a threat to legitimate beverage marketing. The pattern that emerged from both CryptoZoo and Prime was deeply troubling. Logan Paul had repeatedly leveraged his fame and the trust of his audience to promote products that caused financial or physical harm. When confronted with evidence of this harm, his response was consistently to attack critics, blame others, and deflect responsibility, rather than address the underlying problems.
This wasn't just about business failures or honest mistakes. It was about a systematic exploitation of the relationship between influencers and their audiences. Logan had weaponized his fame, turning the admiration and trust of millions of people into a tool for extracting money, regardless of the consequences for those who believed in him. The broader implications of Logan Paul's story extend far beyond one individual's moral failings. His rise and fall illuminates fundamental problems with how our society handles fame, influence, and the responsibilities that come with having millions of followers who trust your judgment. The danger isn't just that Logan Paul specifically can't be trusted. The danger is that our entire system of celebrity and influence is built on emotional connections that can be easily exploited by people who prioritize profit over the well-being of their supporters. When someone has millions of followers, every product recommendation becomes a potential mass manipulation event.
The speed at which harmful products can spread through social media networks means that by the time problems are identified and addressed, thousands or millions of people may have already been harmed. Traditional consumer protection systems weren't designed to handle the scale and speed at which influencer-driven products can penetrate markets. Parents face an almost impossible challenge in this environment. The traditional markers of trustworthiness, like professional credentials or institutional backing, have been replaced by personality-driven marketing that deliberately blurs the line between entertainment and commerce. When a celebrity your child admires recommends a product, how do you evaluate whether that recommendation is based on genuine belief in the product or financial incentive?
The regulatory response has been inadequate, partly because the system itself is new and evolving faster than oversight mechanisms can adapt. The FDA and FTC have authority over certain types of false advertising and unsafe products, but the integration of marketing with entertainment content creates gray areas that are difficult to police effectively. The psychological manipulation techniques used in modern influencer marketing are sophisticated and deliberately designed to bypass rational decision-making processes. When Logan Paul talked about CryptoZoo, he wasn't just describing a product. He was creating an emotional narrative about opportunity, exclusivity, and trust that made it difficult for his audience to evaluate the actual risks and benefits objectively. Before we wrap this up, quick reminder that subscribing helps small channels like ours compete with the big guys. Plus, you'll never miss our latest investigations into influencer scandals. Just saying. The most disturbing aspect of Logan Paul's story isn't the money that was lost or even the health problems that were caused. It's the revelation of how easily trust can be weaponized and how little accountability exists for those who abuse that trust. Logan built his empire on the genuine affection and loyalty of millions of people, then systematically exploited that relationship for financial gain. The victims of CryptoZoo weren't just numbers in a financial fraud case. They were real people who believed in someone they admired and paid a devastating price for that belief. The children who were hospitalized after consuming Prime weren't just statistics in a health study. They were kids whose parents trusted a product that was marketed directly to their demographic.
This pattern of exploitation reveals something deeply troubling about the current state of celebrity culture and social media influence. The traditional boundaries between entertainment, advertising, and friendship have been deliberately blurred to create relationships that feel personal but are ultimately transactional. Fans believe they know and can trust influencers based on carefully curated content, but that relationship is fundamentally asymmetrical and can be exploited without consequence. The legal system has struggled to keep up with these new forms of consumer harm. Traditional fraud statutes were written for situations where the relationship between seller and buyer was clearly defined and commercial in nature. When that relationship is disguised as friendship or entertainment, it becomes much more difficult to prove intent to deceive or establish legal liability.
Logan Paul's current legal troubles suggest that this may finally be changing. Federal investigators don't typically pursue cases unless they believe they have strong evidence of criminal wrongdoing. If Logan is indeed facing decades in prison, it suggests that law enforcement has found evidence of deliberate fraud rather than simple negligence or poor business judgment. But even if Logan Paul faces appropriate consequences for his actions, the system that allowed him to cause harm to so many people remains largely unchanged. Millions of other influencers continue to promote products and investment opportunities to audiences who trust them completely. The next Logan Paul may already be building their empire, and we may not recognize the warning signs until it's too late.
The solution isn't to abandon social media or stop following influencers entirely. Many content creators provide genuine value and maintain ethical relationships with their audiences. But we need to develop better systems for identifying and preventing the exploitation of parasocial relationships for financial gain. This means better regulatory oversight of influencer marketing, clearer disclosure requirements for sponsored content, and stronger penalties for those who deliberately mislead their audiences. It also means education for consumers about how to evaluate product recommendations and investment opportunities regardless of who is promoting them.
Most importantly, it means recognizing that fame and trustworthiness are not the same thing. The qualities that make someone entertaining or compelling as a content creator don't necessarily translate to expertise in business, investing, or product development. A successful career in entertainment doesn't qualify someone to give financial advice or health recommendations to millions of people. Logan Paul's story is ultimately a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked influence and the importance of maintaining healthy skepticism even toward people we admire. The internet has given individuals unprecedented power to reach and influence massive audiences, but it hasn't provided corresponding mechanisms for ensuring that power is used responsibly. The young people who look up to Logan Paul and other influencers deserve better than to be treated as sources of revenue rather than human beings whose trust should be respected and protected. The parents who rely on influencer recommendations when making purchasing decisions deserve honest information about the products being promoted to their children. Until we develop better systems for preventing and punishing the exploitation of parasocial relationships, stories like Logan Paul's will continue to repeat themselves.
The names and faces will change, but the fundamental dynamic of trust being weaponized for profit will remain the same. The real tragedy isn't just what Logan Paul did, but what his story reveals about all of us. We want to believe in the people we admire. We want to trust that someone who entertains us also cares about our well-being. We want to believe that success and moral character go together.
But Logan Paul's downfall proves that these assumptions are dangerous. Fame can corrupt, success can breed arrogance, and the same charisma that builds genuine connection can be used to exploit that connection for personal gain. The only protection is skepticism, critical thinking, and systems of accountability that ensure actions have consequences regardless of how famous or successful someone appears to be. As Logan Paul faces the potential end of his empire and decades behind bars, his story serves as a warning to both influencers and their audiences. For influencers, it demonstrates that exploiting your audience's trust will eventually catch up with you. For audiences, it proves that blind faith in celebrities, no matter how much you admire them, can lead to devastating consequences.